This past week, you may have heard something that sounded extraordinary. I read it on the crawl on a TV screen. I had to stand there and wait for it to come back round to make sure I read it right. That international courts in The Hague were preparing crimes against humanity cases connected to Jeffrey Epstein. That would be a historic development, but it also isn't what has actually happened. What has happened is, in some ways, more revealing. Human rights experts have raised serious legal questions. National investigations are expanding across multiple countries, and somewhere between legal nuance and public conversation, possibility quietly became certainty. Today's Rights and Ethics Update isn't about scandal. It's about how justice is understood, how information changes as it travels, and what it means when people begin to believe accountability exists before institutions themselves have acted. Let's take a closer look. The reporting centers on statements from United Nations human rights experts reviewing newly released Epstein-related materials. Their conclusion was careful but significant. The pattern of abuse described could potentially meet the legal definition of crimes against humanity. That matters, but it's important to understand what it means. These experts do not prosecute cases. They issue legal assessments and recommendations. No international charges have been filed. Let's slow down for a moment and separate what we know from what people think is happening. What we know is this. Several European countries have opened or expanded national investigations connected to trafficking and financial allegations tied to Epstein's network. What is not happening? There is no International Criminal Court investigation. There are no Hague arrest warrants, and no international tribunal has opened a case. So why did so many people come away believing otherwise? That question turns out to be an interesting ethical story. But the real issue here isn't any single individual. It's how institutions respond when accountability crosses borders. And to understand that, we need to look at how legal possibility became public certainty. The progression is familiar in modern media. Experts raise a legal possibility. Headlines compress nuance. Social media removes qualifiers. And audiences encounter the conclusion without the conditions attached. What disappears in that process is legal language itself. Words like could, may, and if supported by evidence. What makes this moment interesting isn't just the law. It's what people expected the law to already have done. So why does this feel international? The Epstein case crosses borders, jurisdictions, and social hierarchies. For many observers, it feels larger than any single national system. And that creates an ethical tension. Legal definitions move cautiously, while moral intuition moves quickly. People aren't randomly imagining international justice. They are responding to a long-standing perception that powerful actors often evade accountability within domestic systems. The expectation of global justice reflects a deeper question about legitimacy. The Hague has become a symbol. Over time, The Hague has become more than a physical court. It represents an idea, a place where power cannot shield wrongdoing. But international courts operate under narrow jurisdictional rules and political constraints. They move slowly by design. The gap between symbolic justice and procedural reality is where misunderstanding grows. And that gap tells us something important. Public trust increasingly depends on the belief that some institution somewhere can act beyond politics. When people believe accountability already exists, it often signals something deeper than misinformation. It signals expectation. Expectation that justice should reach across borders. Expectation that wealth should not insulate wrongdoing. Expectation that institutions are capable of responding to systemic harm. And when institutions move more slowly than those expectations, narratives rush in to fill in the gap. This week's story reminds us that legal reality and public expectation don't always move at the same speed. And when that gap opens, people often fill it with the justice they hope exists, even before institutions act. So perhaps the real question isn't only whether accountability is coming, but what it takes for societies to believe accountability is possible in the first place. That's where we'll leave it today. Thank you for listening. I'm Sarah. This is Ethos Trek.